Hey guys, Matt Welcher with Interdiction Training Development. I did a class the other night at a local gun club about nighttime engagements, shooting in low light or no night conditions, and I want to share a little bit with you about what was going on there. It was pretty interesting, kind of turned into an open forum discussion, a lot of good ideas going on there, and I think it's something that is often overlooked as far as people going out to the range and practicing shooting. A lot of them are considering low light conditions, but if you are really thinking of it in a defensive mindset, when bad things are going to happen, most of the time it's going to be in low light or no light conditions. That's just how it is. So it's really imperative that we understand how the weapon's going to work, understand how to use a light source, and really get out there and practice shooting at night, because if it's not something that you have done, you're really cheating yourself out of an applicable skill set, something that could even possibly save yours or other people's lives. So definitely important to understand nighttime engagements and also to get out there and rehearse it. I know it's hard, a lot of ranges don't allow for low light conditions. Obviously it's hard to find the time to go out at night and do it, but really get out there, and there's no way around it. You just have to do it. You have to practice it. It's what it is. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit about what was going on, like I said, at that class. Keep in mind that was heavily oriented to the tactical side of the community. There was a lot of law enforcement guys there, a couple military guys, so it was definitely oriented for using not even just their techniques but their gear. A lot of stuff that's not available to the civilian market, especially at reasonable prices. Infrared, IR stuff, NVDs, night vision devices, thermal imaging, that sort of thing. Even if you can get your hands on it, it's pricey. It's probably not something in most households. I will touch on that briefly, but mostly I'm just concerned with helping you guys understand, how to use a light source and really how to use that weapon at night. So to start with, let's talk about gear selection. The two big considerations for white light is going to be LED versus incandescent light bulbs. So when you're thinking of a light, the typical, yellow, warm glow that uses a light bulb is going to be the incandescent light bulb. This one here is actually LED. Now, the considerations to be made with these is each has their own advantages, obviously. The incandescent used to win out over LEDs because LEDs give you that really white, burning hot look. And what happens is it's such a focused beam that you don't have any target discrimination. You can only see where that light is, but nothing else around it. Whereas incandescent kind of throws the light, allows you to see a little more of the room, a little more of your surroundings, which is why it was favorable in the tactical community. However, over the years, they have made a lot of advancements in LED lights. And now they have some really good ones that give you that focus beam for target engagement, but still throw the light enough that you have good target discrimination. Some of the main players out there are the Surefire. Streamlight makes a good one that's a little more affordable than the Surefire. Enforce by Haley Strategic for the carbine mounted, not for handguns, but really do a good job at throwing that light while using LEDs. The thing with LEDs is that they last longer, better battery life, and they're much more durable. So those are good considerations for homeowners that just leave a handgun sitting around for when they need it. You don't want to pick it up and find out the battery's dead. So LEDs give you an advantage there. Again, more durable. So if you're using a weapon-mounted light, it sits right underneath that muzzle there. So the concussion from the muzzle blast is going to be pretty serious, and it can cause some damage if you have a cheap light. Incandescent light bulbs, if you're going to use them, just make sure you have a replacement light bulb. But these LEDs typically are more durable than the incandescent ones. That's not to scare you away from the incandescent, just giving you the options there. Advantage of the incandescent for the tactical community is that you can use an infrared filter on your flashlight with them. Whereas LEDs, because of the wavelength they're emitted at, they can't permeate the infrared filter, so you can't use those with night vision goggles. However, for the law enforcement community, for whatever reason, LEDs, these light emitting diode lights, they can penetrate tinting on automobile glass much better than incandescent ones can. They don't give as much reflection and allows you to get better depth into that vehicle, see what's going on better. So definitely stick with the LEDs there. So I want to talk to you about weapon-mounted lights, and then I'm going to get into handheld lights and show you some shooting positions there. I will say this, guys, use what you have. I know a lot of people don't want to go out and spend the money for a weapon-mounted light or for a really expensive handheld light. Surefires are pretty spendy, but they are definitely worth the money. There's a reason they cost that much. A lot of research and development in them, a lot of applicability for use, just efficient tools to have. Best case scenario is that whole philosophy of 2 is 1, 1 is none. If you can have a primary handheld and a weapon mounted, that's the best case scenario. Second best is just going to be to have the weapon mounted. But like I said, use what you have. If you just have a handheld flashlight, just make sure it's readily accessible for those nighttime engagements. So when we're mounting the flashlight on these pistols, obviously we don't have much options where we're going to mount them. They're going to sit right under the muzzle there. But some of the considerations is how they mount. It doesn't use a screwdriver to mount them, like this one just has a screw with a flat head. Some of them have throw levers that are really quick to take on and put on, or take off and put on. Those are my favorites. Just allows you to adapt it per your needs. However, if you're going to have a flashlight that also has a laser on it, such as this one here, make sure it is threaded. That way when you get it on there, you can use a little bit of Loctite, really get it locked down. It's not moving around, you're not losing your zero on that laser. But if it's just a flashlight, again, not a bad idea if it's threaded to use Loctite to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, because recoil of the weapon can loosen these over time. But the easiest ones are going to be the ones with the throw levers. And there's different ways that we can activate the flashlight. That's where the most variation is going to be seen. Some of them have pressure switches. Surefire makes one that sits right underneath the trigger guard, which is really nice. There's tape switches that you can run back along the palm that you can activate with the palm of your hand or your fingers of your hand. And then there's ones that just use switches on the back of the flashlight. For the tactical community, probably using that Surefire one that sits right under the trigger guard is going to be your best option, using a pressure switch. Allows for easy momentary activation. You don't have to change your hand position. It's just there ready to go. These ones I still like. It still gives you the momentary on, but you are modifying your hand position a little so that you can activate that flashlight. So not a big difference, but just something you're going to have to train with to get used to. Now keep in mind, if you get a cheap flashlight, it could break, like I said, because of the sitting right under that muzzle. Also, really heavy ones can induce stoppages in pistols because of the recoil, the way the pistol works. So they make a lot of light, very nice flashlights out there. Even these stream lights are only about $100. So if you can get your hands on one, definitely do that. I will also say this about weapon mounted lights. A lot of guys don't like them because of flagging civilians, right? You don't want to, you have no target discrimination. If you're using the flashlight, you're pointing the muzzle at whatever the flashlight's looking at. Even for cops, some of them now are actually not allowed to point a weapon at a bad guy during a felony stop, for example. Their policy states they cannot point a weapon at them until there is imminent danger, or until that threat actually points a gun at them or something. For that, that's really when it's nice to have your handheld light, and then if you really need to transition to your weapon, then you're ready to get up on that weapon light. But that's when you're going to have a handheld light versus using these weapon lights. So with the handheld light, same thing with, there's both LED and incandescent. Not as big of an issue for recoil, obviously, because you're holding it in your hand. But still think about how that light's going to be thrown, how you're going to use it. To have that tail cap pressure switch is really going to be imperative for these. You don't want a switch on the side. You don't want something that you have to twist. Those aren't going to be very helpful for you in this situation. But using a handheld light, some of the positions they're going to teach you. There's the Harry's position, which is the one that a lot of law enforcement guys use. That's just where you have an overhand grip, your thumb's activating the back of it, and you're going to cross your hands. So one hand grip on the pistol, cross your hands at the wrist, get that locked in, and you can activate that flashlight. Other than the Harry's, there's a syringe carry, which is where you carry it between your fingers. You actually use your palm to activate the flashlight. And then you carry that in somewhat of a normal two-hand position, as much as you can with that flashlight, and then you use your palm to activate that flashlight. There's a modified Harry's, which is gaining a little bit of popularity in the tactical community. It's that same overhand grip, thumb activates the flashlight, but instead of crossing your wrist, you're going to keep it on the same side. What you're going to do is you're going to take your pinky of the hand with the flashlight, and it's going to push against the fingers of your weapon hand. That way you have some control. You're pushing forward with that weapon. It's going to help you to control the recoil of that pistol. You can still easily access that flashlight. For one-handed carry, for guys that want to shoot the pistol with one hand and just hold the flashlight with the other hand, never by your face, center mass, anything like that, because if the threat sees a light and they're going to shoot at you, they're going to shoot where the light is. So you don't want to hold that light by your face. That's why you see law enforcement are taught to hold the light above their head. That way it gets the light away. It also allows them to look different directions and access that light without turning their whole body. Whereas if you were in a Harry's position, you would have to turn your whole body to aim that flashlight different directions. Also one-handed for when you're doing reloads, or if you're injured, you're going to have to hold it one-handed. For a reload, just treat it like a tactical reload. I'll just show you guys this real quick. So if you're in a modified Harry's position and you want to reload, so say we're locked, we're out of ammo. What we're going to do is, so we're in a modified Harry's, we're out of ammo, slide locks back, drop the magazine, and then treat it like a tactical reload. Like this is the magazine. You're going to slide the flashlight forward in your hand a little bit so that your index, middle, and thumb are free. That's going to allow you to grab the magazine like you normally would with your index finger ready to guide the magazine in the magazine well. Bring it up to the pistol, make sure it's lined in there, and slam it home with your palm of your hand. You can drop the slide and you're ready to get back into position. So it's just something you're going to have to practice with, how you're going to use that flashlight when you're doing your reloads. But definitely practice, even if you have a weapon mounted light, practice using a handheld light, because there may come a position where you need to use a handheld light versus your weapon mounted. So for employing the weapon mounted light, I'll show you on a pistol first, then on the carbine. For weapon mounted light on a pistol, like I said, not many options where you can mount it. Kind of is where it is. But pressure switches are great, but the momentary on is what you're going to want to use. The reason being, you don't want a constant on flashlight because it gives away your position. Momentary on allows you to assess the situation, ID a target, engage a target, and then turn it off. And that's really what you want, to be able to ID that target and then engage it and then disappear. So when you're coming up with the pistol, don't want to draw with the light all the way up on the target, because all you're doing is making a line between you and that threat, and they can see exactly where you're standing. The best way to do it is to search areas with just a real quick tap of the light, just enough so you can see what's there, possibly ID a threat, and then if you need to engage that threat, just tap the light again. So if you're in a dark room, cut it up into a pie, different areas where you're going to search, and then kind of bounce around, go back and forth. So you can search one side of the room, then the other, then come back to the middle. That way, they're real quick looks, but you can see everything that's in the room, and you're not really giving away your position as much. For the tactical community, obviously momentary on is what it's going to have to be, just because, if you're coming up on a house, even for law enforcement, if you're going to serve a warrant, you don't want that light on when you're coming under a window. You don't want it shining under doors. If you're in a stack and you're not the first guy in the stack, you don't want your light on because it's going to just silhouette the first guy going through that doorway. He probably won't appreciate that much. That's another reason tape switches have gained a little bit of a bad rap, because a lot of accidental discharges have happened using those pressure switches. For example, on the carbine, with the flashlight, this one actually has a tape switch. It's that pressure switch just to activate that flashlight. It's easy if you slip, if you're going over ladders or something, your natural tendency is just to grip what's ever there. It's easy to have an AD that way. If you put it in a range bag even, and it's just sitting on its side, it could be on that tape switch. You're going to show up and have dead battery, dead bulb. So just be cognizant of where that tape switch is mounted. I actually put mine between the rails. That way the rails offer a little bit of protection. Also, you're going to want to be able to activate these lights with both hands. So I can get in my strong side position, activate that flashlight. If need be, however, I can transition to weak side, and by modifying my grip a little, I can reach over and activate that flashlight. Now for tail cap activation, better to have a vertical foregrip. That way you can just grab it, reach around, and activate it with your thumb. Or if you're shooting with the other hand, obviously it's right there for you to activate with your thumb. So those tail cap switches are nice for that. As far as mounting the flashlight on a carbine, you're going to want it as far forward as possible. Ideally you would want it in front of the muzzle, but that's not really possible. But we want it as far forward as possible. Mounting underneath the muzzle is not desirable. The reason being, when you turn that flashlight on, if it's underneath the barrel, it's going to cast a shadow. And when you're looking at a threat, if that flashlight's center mass and you activate that, the barrel shadow is going to be right where the face is. You can't see the eyes of the target. You can't see what they're doing. So it's better to mount it on the side, especially if it's like this one that's a dual purpose. So it also has a laser on it. If it's going to be dual purpose and it has a laser, then definitely don't mount it underneath. The reason being, lasers are lights that travel in straight lines. Like I've talked about before, the trajectory of the bullet is going to be an arch. So if that laser is underneath, it's going to be zeroed at 1 yard, it's going to be off everywhere else, or it's going to be zeroed at whatever distance you did it at. So the best way to get is to use parallel zero if you're going to use a laser on a carbine. So mount it on the side. You're going to want to measure the horizontal displacement between the barrel axis, or the bore axis, and where the laser is. So the middle of the bore right here, right to where the laser is, that horizontal offset, find out what that distance is. If it's 3 inches, then you're going to go to whatever distance your rifle is zeroed at. So if it's zeroed at 50 yards, you're going to zero your laser at 50 yards. And what you're going to do is, with that laser on the bullseye, you're going to want the bullet impact to be the opposite side of which side the laser's mounted on. So in other words, let me clarify a little. Say I'm zeroing at 50 yards, right? My laser's mounted on the right side and have a 3-inch horizontal displacement. To get a parallel zero, I'm going to want that laser on the bullseye, but I'm going to want the bullet impact to be 3 inches to the left of the bullseye. See, opposite side of the laser, same horizontal displacement. Then you're using the same holds that you would with your regular sight. You know, 100-yard hold, 300-yard hold, that's same thing. It's not going to be dead on, but it's going to give you better accuracy than zeroing your laser for a particular distance and not using a parallel zero. For guys using night vision, using those infrared lasers, yeah, some of these, like this EOTech here, does have infrared capabilities. Really, really, really hard to get the night vision behind that to get a good sight picture. It's just not something that's going to happen. So infrared laser is almost imperative with night vision goggles. Especially on pistols, you're not going to be able to see the iron sights at all. So you have to use an infrared laser. With those, just make sure you have a good zero. Quick, you know, and confirm your zero before you go out. Quick way to do that is to actually use the infrared setting in the EOTech. Make sure it's on target, then look at where the laser is. It should also be on target. Quick way to confirm your zero. I will say this, when you're shooting at night, whether you're using flashlight, whether you're using night vision with the infrared, make sure you're shooting from the same position. Even if you're using that laser coming up on target, don't try to shoot from the third position. Don't shoot from the hip. Still bring that weapon up and engage like you would normal. For lasers, I do want to touch on this because it's kind of turned into a fad. Like I said before, using infrared lasers for night vision, kind of imperative, that's a different story. What I'm talking about is people that use visible lasers. It's really turned into something, a lot of people are buying these because they're readily available, they're pretty affordable, and they think it's an end-all, and it's really not. It's just another tool in the toolbox, and that's all it is. It's something you should not rely on by any means. Benefit of the laser is deterring a threat. Is a huge benefit for visible lasers. Once a target sees that laser on them, they understand you're serious, they understand you have a weapon. It could cause them to, you know, to avoid all hostilities. It may not even have to be a shot fired. Could just de-escalate the situation there. Another advantage of lasers is if you're shooting from unconventional positions where you can't get good sight alignment, it's nice to have a laser. However, like I said before, do not rely on them. You have no target discrimination with a laser. It's not bright enough that I can actually see what I'm looking at. Also, you're going to find out if you go out and practice, you're quicker with iron sights than you are with lasers. Once that first shot goes off and the recoil causes that laser to jump, you're going to be faster using the iron sights to get back on target than you will the laser. So if you can, always use the iron sights. If that laser dot happens to be there, fantastic, but rely on the iron sights over the laser any day of the week. I will also say this. There are sights out there such as this Tritium night sights here, and these will glow in the dark. Those are very handy tools to have. Again, it doesn't allow you to have target discrimination. You're not casting any light, but it's also not giving away your position. It will allow you to engage a target, will allow you to get good sight alignment without using a laser or without using a flashlight. But basically, what all this boils down to is just finding the time to get out there and do it. Like I said, try to have both handheld and weapon mounted. That's best case scenario. Second best is just the weapon mounted. Third best, just the handheld. I would always, 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 always urge you to try to have a weapon mounted flashlight if possible for nighttime engagements. Guys who think that a handheld is better, I would honestly say just have not done the time shooting at nighttime to really understand how advantageous it is to have a weapon mounted light. But the big thing is just getting out there practicing with this, you know, so you understand the muzzle blast, understand how the firearm's going to function differently, how your grip's going to have to change, how that light's really going to work in a nighttime engagement scenario. So again, this is Matt Welch with Interdiction Training Development. Hope this was helpful. Hope you can get out there and train hard and stay safe.